Ooh, recording in progress. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Raise the Bar, the Sky High and Fly Jump Camps podcast. My name is Troy Haynes. I'm your host, and I'm happy to welcome Agina. I screwed it up already. Chin is a jumper at Azusa Pacific, and she has graciously joined us today to share her insights. We're going to find out about her background and all those kinds of good things. So I saw on your Instagram feed, first off, we're going to start off with, are you just a high jumper or you do anything else?
Right now, I'm just a high jumper. In high school, I used to do long triple, 4x1, 200, sometimes 4x4, but I decided it would be best to specialize in high jump.
Okay. So was there a push to get you to be a heptathlete?
No, but it's funny. The coach at APU brought it up before, but I just don't see myself running the 800.
Nobody wants to run that 800.
Yeah.
I talked with, I think it's Kendall Gustafson from UCLA, and now the jumps coach at Texas State, and she was like, nobody likes that 800. So that's understood. So I'm saying that tongue in cheek when I say only a high jumper, because that's all I did. Also, I pole vaulted a little bit. I actually started doing the long jump first when I first started doing track and field, but I always make the joke, nobody ever asked me once I got to UCLA to do anything else. They didn't say, hey, why don't you come help us in long jump? Oh, you mean tall, slow white guys can't long jump? Yeah, that's true. And I couldn't pole vault. I was like, what do you do? Just a high jump. That's it. And it, when people see your track and field stuff, I was like, oh, what did you run? I'm like, no, I was jumping.
Yeah.
I had one
step. I always assume once you say you do track, they're like, oh, you run, right? No, yeah. I jump.
No, I jump over stuff. Yeah. So what is your personal best in high jump now that you've been in college?
Okay, so my personal best outdoor is 185 meter. And I didn't used to know what meters were. So if you don't know what meters are, that's 6 feet and 3/4. And then for indoor, it's 183 meter, which is 6 feet, I think, just 6 feet.
Just 6 feet.
Yeah.
And then so let's back up. Where did you do your jumping in high school?
I jumped at Sanger High School, which is in Sanger, California, which is a small town in Central California.
That upper Central California. Okay. Close to Sacramento and Fresno and those types of towns.
Okay, so Sanger is 25 minutes from Fresno and 2.5 hours from Sacramento.
Sacramento, I think of Sacramento as the true middle of the state, but yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of,
there's a lot of California north of us down here in Southern California. So, okay, so you did that. Did you do any other sports in high school, Chin?
Yeah, I did volleyball for 3 years, I think. I was varsity for 2 and JV for 1.
Awesome. Were you guys pretty good?
Yeah, we were good. I had an offer to play at CSU Bakersfield, but I ended up quitting my senior year to focus on track. Okay,
awesome. And then you've jumped 6 feet and 6 feet and 3/4 now. What did you jump in high school?
Oh, I think my PR in high school was 5'9", and I only jumped that once. Other than that, I was jumping 5'5" every meet.
Really? So one big day, but 5'5" is always respectable. That's, state quality, CIF, prelim, CIF finals, all that. So did that 5'9" jump, when and where did that happen? Was that at a big meet? Did that get you to the state meet? How did that work?
I'm not exactly sure, but it definitely was not at state. It might have been at Valleys. At state, I think I got 6th. I might have jumped 5'7", but yeah, state was tough. All I knew was that to win state, you had to jump 5'10", and jumping 5'10" at 17 years old was pretty difficult. So
right, yeah. Well, what people don't realize from other states, I don't think, is that California is technically, I think if we were a nation, we'd be like the 5th largest nation in the world. I mean, California itself is like its own little world, so even breaking it into north and central and south and all that, it's like, I ran into that same thing my senior year. I made it to state only my senior year. And, I ended up jumping against guys I jumped against in college for years to come. you know, and it was a real eye opener because from the South, like I was jumping well right at the end of the season at the South. So I was like the number one jumper in the Southland, and I'm going up to state thinking, oh yeah, this is going to be easy. No. there's tons of jumpers and athletes up there that you don't get to see all year, even at
Yeah.
Mount Sac or Arcadia. It's like they didn't bother to come down, or you know, for whatever reason, just, and this is back in the day. I mean, we didn't have these websites that you guys have now where you could see what was going on in the state rankings and all that. That did not happen. What I knew about other jumpers was from reading the newspaper. And the day after the meets, we would be looking through the newspapers and you would see the local dual meets. And then sometimes if you were looking through big invitationals, you'd see marks, but that was it. That was our only way of really knowing, what was going on in the state. So, all right, you were a 5'9" jumper in high school. You went to state. That was your senior year. You came in 6th.
Oh, I think I went to state sophomore year, junior year, and senior year. Yeah, it's really fuzzy. It's been a while. So I know that I've medaled twice, but I think my first year at state, I probably didn't do the best.
Getting on the podium is no small feat, like we said, because I know there's other states that I've done interviews with athletes, and the winning state high jump mark was 5'3" or something, for the girls. Wow. 5'3" wouldn't have gotten us out of CIF, prelims or CIF finals or whatever. And it's no knock. It's just we've got a lot of people here, number one, and so that makes it harder. Even with 4 levels of schools in the Southland, Division 1, 2, 3, and 4, CIF, and then there's city, and then there's this, and yeah, it's crazy. So we're out of high school. How did you end up going to Azusa Pacific?
So I actually wanted to go to UCLA, and I emailed Coach Hoyt when he was at UCLA, and I think he was somewhat interested, and I met him. It might have been Arcadia. I met him in person for the first time. I think I was a junior. We didn't really talk after that. And then senior year, I decided, okay, I want to go to college for track. So I emailed him, and he said that he moved to APU and that it was a D2 school, but it was still in Southern California. So all I knew in high school, I was like, I want to go to school in LA. So I was like, okay, D2, that's fine. I went on a visit. I met him again, learned more about the team, met some of the teammates, and just decided it was the place for me compared to all my other options.
Yeah. Well, that first time I saw you this year was at, I think, was it the same week as Mount Sac, or was it the one later than that? I think I might have seen you both.
Oh, it might have been Brian Clay.
Brian Clay first, yeah. So that was the same week as Mount Sac, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a busy week in LA. Crazy busy week. And then I was amazed at how many people were at your guys' meet. When I got there, it's my first year coaching at Vanguard, which is an NAIA school, not even D2 like yourselves. And it seemed like we would all end up in the same places a lot of times. So I was seeing, some of the D1 kids, some of the D2 like yourselves. I had some former athletes that were down at UCSD, and I'm like, hey, I haven't seen you in 3 years since high school, and so it was like old home week, at a lot of these places. But man, you talk about a melting pot of colleges. Like I think Marquette was at your guys, at Brian Clay, and I kept seeing all these pasty, I want to say pasty white people from the East Coast, but they were coming out and they were the people that were laying out and putting on sunscreen.
Yeah.
They had been locked in, I guess, indoors for like 4 months or something before they came out, and they were like, the sun, and they're like bowing down and they're like putting on oil. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what happens to people that don't live in Southern California. They're like, they never see the sun. So yeah, it was great. There was almost no room to even sit down. So you're standing elbow to elbow with people, and you just start talking, because you might as well, you're sharing the same air. So I met a lot of interesting, coaches and athletes, and, looking at programs that I never thought that I would see, out here. But yeah, that was a real interesting place. I don't know if I have the right sense for it, even being there twice, because the second meet was that last chance meet and again, just booming with people,
Trying to make it to nationals.
not a lot of room right down there when you got all the events hit, and it's like almost easier to be in the stands. So let's do this now. One of the things that I've been talking about on this show in particular, again, we're here on Raise the Bar. Just throwing it out there. I'm Troy Haynes, your host. I run Sky High and Fly jump camps, and I am currently coaching at Vanguard. Used to jump at UCLA, been coaching for 30 something years. I'm losing track of all that. Chin was gracious enough to give us her time. We're going over this run that I've been on has been US Olympic trials or US Olympic competitors or US Olympic wannabes. So it kind of covers the gamut, but I know with your PRs that if you didn't qualify, you're knocking on the door. Did you get in 2016? That's already 6 years ago. You'd have been pretty young. Were you still in high school in 2016? Did you get a qualifying mark back then?
I was in high school still. No, I didn't qualify until 2020.
So 2020, you got a qualifying mark, correct? Now,
Yeah.
Did you compete in the trials in 2021?
Yes, I did.
You did. Awesome. So see, that qualifies, and that makes me instantly super extra jealous of you because you made it to trials and I didn't. I've stated many times on the show, I tried in 84, even though I just jumped 7 feet for the first time that year, but I had a good year. The trial height was 7'4". Couldn't make that. And then on 88, the trial height just kept moving up for the guys. So it went from 4 to 4.5 or 4 3/4 or 5 1/4. I can't remember. And then in 92, when I was 28, so it just kept going up. I think it was 7'5 3/4 by the time I turned to be 28. And I never quite made it, but I love the Olympics. I love anything to do with the Olympics. I love watching the trials. So tell us about the trials. How much fun was that? And how did you fare when you got there?
Okay. Well, leading up to the trials, I qualified because I jumped 185 at outdoor nationals. And I think for the trials, you go based off your world ranking. So although it wasn't the automatic qualifier, which I think is 195,
Right.
which is 6'4", 6'5" for girls, I was ranked number like 17 coming in, maybe 15. So my coach told me right after I jumped, like, you can go to the trials if you want. And I never thought that would even be, I was never thinking about that during season. I was just focused on collegiate track. So once he told me that, I was like, oh shoot, like, sure. So I went into it, not really thinking, oh, I'm about to make the Olympic team.
Right.
Because I've never been to a meet like that in my life. So I get there, the Hayward field is beautiful. So nice. It was very official. We just did shakeouts, looked around town. So the day we actually competed, I remember seeing like Anna Hall, Vashti, who else was there? Rachel Glenn, literally just all of those people that you always see on Instagram.
Yeah.
Lily Lowe, all the D1 girls, and me and my teammate and this other girl were the only D2 girls at the entire Olympic trials.
Right.
So that was also insane. And I think in that moment I knew, like, oh, this can definitely be more than just collegiate track.
Right.
Although I didn't place the way I wanted to, the opening height was 5'9", which I've never attempted in my life.
To open, yeah.
Yeah, I usually open at like 5'3", maybe 5'5". So that was something where I'm like, okay, I need to work on this next year, because if I want to take this seriously, that's the new normal. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we talked about to getting to that point. What did you end up jumping at the trials? You remember the height you made?
I think.
Did you make the 5'9"?
I think I cleared. Yeah, I think I cleared it, and I could not clear the second bar.
Yeah,
I think the second bar was 5'10".
Like you said, that's a rude awakening, right? When they're opening it, within 3 inches of your PR, it's like, whoa, step up here quickly. But it does save some energy, right? So you don't have to jump 5'3", 5'5", 5'7", and then 5'9". So minimal, perfect performance. You've saved 3 jumps, all first make jumps, but if you throw in a miss here or there, you can save yourself quite a bit.
Mhm.
That's something I'm always, trying to push that awareness on both my, clients and athletes in college is, the becoming more efficient. Early in the season, I don't usually push it that hard because, yeah, we need the reps. You miss, you make, fine. Let's just get to another bar, But when you get to the end of the season and you're worried about your places and all that, yeah, being more efficient, saving all your energy for the higher jumps, having all the tiebreakers rolling your way because you don't have any misses, all those things come into play for sure. So you jumped 5.9 at your first trials in 2021, next trials in 2024. Now, having been once, are you way more aware of the process? Do you know what you have to jump and when you have to jump it by and all those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me leading up to that is being more consistent at jumping 6 feet and eventually being very comfortable at 6'3". I think
Right.
6'3" would put me in a very good spot.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's funny. We've talked about this on the on this podcast, and with other athletes and coaches have been on, and the theme keeps coming out that even though we just hit a boom period, we're just finishing up. As we speak, they're probably competing in the worlds,
Mhm.
Eugene, and with all that going on, track and field is kind of at an all-time low worldwide. European numbers are down. In the US here, if you were to ask someone who doesn't really know anything about track and field, who are the top track and field athletes in the country, they might look at you and be like, wait, what? which
Mhm.
sport are we talking about? Because we don't have a big TV presence, unless it's the Olympics, World
Mhm.
Championships. The NCAA finals were on, but they were like a week delayed. There's just, it's not a big spectator thing. There's not a lot of what do you want to call it, sponsorship and ads, right? We don't have big promotion. Now that Usain Bolt has left, and
Yeah.
it's just hard to get big media attention, right? I remember at the peak of his gold medalness, we'll call it his awesomeness. I remember one or two commercials. He's doing this. Somebody's asking, where are the chicken wings? Over there, and I'm like, that's great. I love to see it. I love to see track and field athletes getting promoted, but at the same time, still small time, right? Compared to, Patrick Mahomes doing Allstate ads or whatever. He's like 5 or 6 of those commercials already, right? And he's already
Mhm.
making $50 million a year on top of that. He signed a 10-year contract for $500 million. So, in track and field, we got a long way to go to promote our athletes, and I grew up as a kid watching the 72 Olympics, the first Olympics I really remember. I was 8 years old. So I watched Olga Korbut, this little Russian gymnast who was 16 and looked 35. She had this careworn face and little pigtails. And then I remember watching, unfortunately, Munich happened. That was in Munich, and there was the hostage situation and all that, which is a tragedy. And then, but great track and field and great sports. And then 76 was when I was 12, and I really watched that whole Olympics. There were American boxers and gymnastics and track and field, and Bruce Jenner won the gold medal in the decathlon. And,
Mhm.
and it was just like, wow. And I know Dwight Stones went and high jumped as a senior in high school, and I didn't even know that name, and nobody really knew it yet, but he was going to make 3 Olympic teams and, do all kinds of other things. So it was always so exciting, and now all of a sudden it's like track and field were not household names, So we've been trying to come up with some ideas and say, what do you think? How are we gonna change this? Because, those people that are in it, obviously we love the sport and we like to get more people, interested in watching these great athletes like yourself going to the trials and then, making international teams and going and competing. So, any ideas on that front? What would you like to see happen in the next, say, 3 years before the trials roll out?
I think personally, a lot of these big athletes need to start posting on social media more.
Mhm.
Um, I know a lot of them are very focused and don't want to post their workouts and stuff like that, but that
Eight,
is literally the only way for people to know about you.
right?
I understand like football players, yeah, they have hype up videos and stuff, but for track, you have to post your workouts, or you have to engage with your followers, or else no one will really know who you are until it's the Olympics. Which
Right.
is why I really like Tara and Hunter, because they're constantly posting their workouts and engaging with people and doing lives, and that just really helps
Yeah.
their name. So
have you found any tidbits on, say, Instagram as you're looking through people's stuff? I tell everybody this, but in the last 3 years of doing Instagram, I have, of my 2,500 people that I'm following, I think out of that, it's like 90% are either jumpers, coaches, or trainers. And on my feed, when I flip it open and start looking at it, usually somebody doing some speed agility work or some kind of, strengthening or explosive plyometrics, or somebody's running. And, when I see something I like, I just go, oh, copy and stick in my plyometrics folder, copy, stick in my strength and conditioning folder, whatever, because it's an easy tool. If I tell somebody else, I got a new client and they go, oh, what should I be doing? I'm like, okay, here's your squat workout. Here's this, here's that. And I just send it to them and I go, do this 5 sets of 8, for 4 weeks, or, whatever it is. And it's there. I don't even have to demonstrate.
yeah.
Which is great. So I'm 58 years old. I don't want to be demonstrating squats and plyos and all that. It's like, here's somebody much better, and tons of stuff. You're talking about people that aren't posting their workouts. I called it gatekeeping. That's what Barbara calls it. She goes, a lot of gatekeepers out there, they don't want to show. It's almost like, oh, I've got this secret that works for me. But at the same time, like you said, now you're laboring in obscurity. So you're like, nobody knows who you are, even if you're really, really good. But I'm that guy that's always trying to peek behind the curtain, like, what are they doing over there in Russia? What are these 5'8"? There's this one gal from Poland or something. I was following her. She's 5'7" or 8 at 14, and she's already jumped 5'9", right? And I'm going, she's 14 years old. She's jumping 5'9" already. I'm like, what are they doing over there? It's like, but when you watch them, you're like, oh, I can see, the running technique is pretty clean. They got a nice lean back. They've got a real short, penultimate step. They've got this, they've got that. So it's just like, and every once in a while you get that little glimpse, I'm like, oh, that's a cool drill. I really like that, and I steal, liberally. Like,
I mean, that's fine if they post it online. Like,
right.
They should assume someone's going to reuse it. But I definitely save high jump drills. There's an account, Jeremy Fisher. He's a coach in San Diego.
Yeah.
I like a lot of his high jump drills. I save them. I can't really do them by myself because I need a coach for most of them, but I'll see some of them and be like, oh, that could actually help in the weight room.
Right.
Instead of just doing squats.
Right. Yeah.
Just simulate the high jump.
Something technique wise, right? Or just like a quick plyometric drill or a bridge between a lift and a jump. Absolutely. Yeah. Jeremy was on, I don't even remember now. It's been months, but the one problem I've been having is I can't get these podcasts out fast enough. So I don't think Jeremy's has come out yet, but we've got his in the can, and he was so gracious. He was really upfront about what was going on. He was telling me the story about how his training center down there was funded by USA Track and Field, and now they're pulling his funding. So he's trying to find other ways to keep it going, which is a travesty because anybody that knows anything about him knows the quality of the work that's going on down there, like you said. And I believe the guy that took third in the Olympics in the high jump from Korea, he was over here training last year before the Olympics and was rated number 1 in the world most of the year. I don't know how it turned out. Usually they save the guys high jump for the last day. So I don't know that they've had that just yet. I probably should pay better attention. Problem with the summer world championships, when you're a teacher, is summers come along and you're like, oh, I'm gonna take some time off. So I start checking out, it's like, did you hear so-and-so did what? I'm like, I'm golfing. I don't want to hear about that right now. I'll read about it in a couple months. So what do you see for yourself, Chin, that you have to do in order to, you mentioned the height 6'3" as opposed to 6 feet 3/4. How are you going to step up to that level in these next couple of years?
I think a big thing would be weight training and nutrition for me. I don't think I'm getting any taller. I can be slimmer, but the thing is, I am probably made of 90% muscle. So the only fat there is for me to lose, maybe like my stomach or something, like, but other than that, I'm very muscular. And I think something that also helps me is taking more rest. I've found that jumping every weekend for me does not help me at all.
Too much competition, too much.
It's too much,
Yeah.
especially if we're jumping 3 times a week at practice.
Yeah.
Um, I think for high jumpers, either I alternate with a different event or just compete every other weekend. But I mean, too much sometimes isn't good. And it can really cause a strain on your joints.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
also becoming faster with my approach, I think that could really help because using too much power can be painful at times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you're not the first. I've had other guests on. We've talked about this ad nauseum, but one of my teammates at UCLA, Lee Balkin, who's number 2 or 3 on the all-time list, jumped 7.3 in high school, still holds the state meet record for high school, the state meet record, not the state record.
Mhm.
7.3 at the state, jumped 7.4 or 5 when he was at UCLA. As soon as he left UCLA, he jumped higher. He might have jumped even 6 when he was at UCLA, but when he left, he jumped 7.7. And I remember when I asked him, I said, what changed? Because most of the time when we were jumping at UCLA, I remember dual meets where we were competing, and Lee always beat me. So it was one of those guys. The only time I ever beat Lee Balkin, I had to PR twice to do it. And I tell the story often that every time that I PR'd in college, I didn't even win the meet, which is humbling. But it was, just one of those things. And he was so much more talented. But he told me, I go, how did you jump 7.6? You're jumping 3 and 4 last year. What was the big difference? And he said, I didn't jump as much.
Yeah.
I didn't train as many days. I didn't do as much volume. Like when I was working out with him and Del Davis, we did really dumb stuff. I mean, just fun but a lot. And the volume, just the number of repetitions was way too high. I think about it sometimes. I really did feel burned out when I got to be 28. I was,
Yeah.
and jumpers, jump past their late 20s now. So I was really ready to hang it up at that point. And I was like a 46-inch, 2-footed vertical guy. I was a one-legged, up over 50 vertical guy. I always had hops and I always loved jumping. So the jumping itself was okay. But as soon as I did too much, knee tendonitis, I had
Mhm.
patellar this, I had, strains here and there. And it's just the volume would always catch you if you weren't watching. And I don't know, that other people know that out there, but jumping is just fun. I mean, usually, when you jump over something, there's an immediate reward you either
Mhm.
make, right? So even if it's just a drill and you've got fun people in practice, hopefully, and you're competing against each other kind of, and, so like you said, you can push, but you already mentioned, 3 days a week plus a meet, right? That's just crazy. That, that wears you down so quickly, And when you're younger, I don't think you notice it. I give the analogy sometimes like one of those fighting games, like Tekken or something like that. And you're fighting along and your power bars get lower and lower and lower, right? And all of a sudden somebody pops you one and you're down. And then you're laying there going, come on, get up, get up, get up. And they get up, but their power bar comes back. And instead of going all the way to the end and coming back to full power, it comes like halfway.
Yeah.
And then next time they get knocked down, it comes back a quarter of the way. And I go, that's kind of the way it is with jumping and any athletics. But, when you're training hard, you're sapping that energy bar, and then say you go to sleep, you eat well, like you're talking about your nutrition and you rest and blah, blah, blah. And you're young. I mean, you're in your 20s. I'm in my late 50s, and I don't recover the same way. Little cuts and things take 2 weeks to heal. So when you get injured and you come back the very next day, working out is kind of like an injury, right? So you come back the next day and you start to recover and you feel pretty good because you're young. You wake up and you're like, all right, let's do this again. It's like, well, now the power bar goes farther down and it doesn't come back quite as far, right? So it's like that has become huge in training is quality, quantity, volume. That's the real fine edge because you have to get an explosive effort somewhere along the line, you might not have to do killer heights in practice, but how do you translate that to meets, right? How do you all of a sudden, if you're only jumping 5'6" in workouts, like you said, all of a sudden you're like, I need to jump 5'9" or 5'10". I didn't even take any full approaches this week. Can that translate? And you've been around long enough to know, yeah, it can,
Yeah.
you don't want to wait, but that I see it all the time now. Football, with the brain injury things, they don't smash heads all the time anymore. It used to be all the time. Those teams would hit full practices week 15 of the NFL season. They're still killing each other. And they're like, hey, this doesn't make any sense anymore. Let's do this walkthrough in pads or in half pads or whatever. And, they hit every once in a while, but nowhere near as much as they used to. And then, Kevin Durant and these guys that blow out something in the season, Klay Thompson, he missed 2 years coming back from an Achilles tear, right? And then who was the coach that used to coach for the Spurs? Greg Popovich. He still coaches there. He was shutting down his best players. They called it load management, right? But he'd be like, oh yeah, Tim Duncan, multiple time All-Star. They won 5 titles in the time he's been there. He's like, yeah, he's not going to play this game this week. And if it was a marquee team, where the ticket holders are like, hey, we wanted to see, Tim Duncan versus, the Lakers. Oh, yeah, we're holding Tim out today. He bruised his knee the other day or whatever, and whether he did or not, they couldn't say you had to force him to play if they put him on the injured list. Right. And Popovich was smart enough to know, he's like, hey, this is an 82 game regular season. Once we get done with this, we've got 4 rounds of playoffs, possible 4 out of 7 games. Sometimes they go 7 games, it's like a whole nother season. And these guys start breaking down. They're getting older. They can't put in all that time. And he goes, what's more important? You guys want to see him in the regular season, or do you want to see him jump well and play well at the end, right? When the chips are on the line. So we're fighting the same thing, right? You got to be sharp, fast, light, explosive at the big meets. And nobody cares how you did at the beginning, right? You want to
it's all about that.
Championships, right? You want to get to the world championships. You want to get to NCAAs. You want to, whatever it is at the end of your season, that's when you want to be fast and explosive and jumping your best, right? So that's the big deal. So you've got strength in the weight room was a goal. You can't gain any weight. What are you talking about with your nutrition? What are you going to do there?
Just eating healthier and cooking more versus just eating out. I used to be very good at meal prepping, but with school, it's been stressful. It's so much easier just to go into a restaurant and buy something than to spend 2 hours and cook, because as a student athlete, sometimes we don't have 2 hours to just cook.
Right.
There'll be times where I'm cooking and doing homework at the same time.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe I'll start buying like HelloFresh or something, like pre-made food, but just working on that, or like small things like overnight oats. Overnight oats.
Okay.
Yeah, those are good. Stuff like that.
Yeah, well, that's huge. And, like you said, if you're not a state supported athlete, right, you're not on the payroll somewhere, and the typical US Olympic athlete, I would say, not just track and field, but all the way across the board. If it's not a big money sport, right, then you're probably supporting yourself while you go to school. You might have 2 or 3 jobs. So, well, listen, we're coming up right now. I'm showing, my producer says we've got to take a quick break. So we're going to come back in just a minute with Chin and spend more time talking.